everybody, it's Eugene Lisho here, and welcome to Click 3D. This is the program where we talk about photogrammetry, but more recently I've decided that I'm going to start introducing more types of 3D technologies into this little video series. And so today what I'm going to be doing is talking about something that I wanted to do for some time now, and that is to talk about the total station. And the total station is a little less common to people who are doing forensic mapping these days because the laser scanner is sort of taken over a little bit, but it is one of the original forensic mapping instruments, and it has a very long history. If you're a surveyor, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but I think it's going to be a really interesting piece of technology to talk about. And there's a couple of reasons why I'm doing this. One is that it was one of the first instruments that I bought. So I had Photogrammetry, which was software and a camera, but it was the real first 3D instrument that I was using to document things like roadways and houses and all kinds of different things. And it's a fantastic instrument when you know how to use it to your advantage. Now, there's another reason why I'm doing this, and that is that I'm giving my baby away. I shouldn't say giving, but it's found a new owner, and I don't use it that often anymore, and I hate to see equipment sitting and not doing anything, especially when it can be super useful. So this is also going to be a type of tutorial. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on the total station, and I also want to go forward and explain the kit, all the different pieces, and then later on I think what we'll do is we'll head outside and then set it up and then take a few shots, take a few measurements, just to give you an idea of how that all works, and maybe even just export the data and look at it in 3D. So on that note, I want to get started, and I want to talk about the total station in general. A bit of history. So the total station is a device that actually does a couple of different things. And so some people will teach it as, two devices in one, but there are many devices that do a number of different things. And this by no means is an exception. So the first thing that it does is that it measures distances. So basically you'll look through a little telescope, you point it at a reflector or a prism or a surface, and basically it sends out a signal. That signal comes back, and based on what's going in and what's going out in terms of the signals, then it can determine the distance. Well, that's okay. Distance is important to know, but you also need to know where that point is in space. And so is it higher than you? Is it lower than you? Where is it located? So we don't just need the distance, but we want to get it in 3D space. So for that, we need the theodolite. And so it's also a theodolite. And a theodolite really just measures angles which are vertical and horizontal. So if I'm the total station and I just point out any direction, sort of up and down, I can measure the distance of an object, okay, and then I can also determine where it is relative to me. So if this was my zero heading, I can move so many degrees this way horizontally, and then I can move up, and when this distance line or this vector points to a surface or something, I can get back to that point and I can recreate it. Now that's using what are called polar coordinates. So basically I have an angle this way, and then I have an angle this way. But the total station will do the job for you later on, or even in software, and it'll convert it over to Cartesian coordinates. So that's just where we have X, Y, Z coordinates, and it's most common for us if you have a grid type system in 3D, you can move along X, along Y, and then along the Z axis to pick up a point. Now the total station came out or was first used in about the 1990s, the early 1990s, and used originally for crash scene documentation and also for crime scene documentation. So around 1990, between 1990 and 1992 were the first few cases where the total station was used. And so since then, it had a lot of adoption and a ton of use in so many different areas. And so I want to refer people to a text that came out a while ago, and this is called Fundamentals of Forensic Mapping. Now this book was released in 2010, and it goes over a lot of the fundamental concepts of what the total station does, best practices, setting it up, and a lot of different things. So some of which I'll cover in this particular video. Now, if you want to get this, again, Fundamentals of Forensic Mapping, a shout out to Joel Salinas and also Kent Boots. They were the authors of this book, and I've had the pleasure of meeting Joel, so a very knowledgeable person, in this particular area for sure. But yeah, you can pick this up. It's Kinetic Energy Press, and I'm just saying that because I've had a copy of this for some time now, and it's always been like a great reference. So what I'd like to do now is actually go through the different components of the total station, and then we'll put it all together after. But I need to go through it one by one, so we'll do that in just a second. Okay, so let's talk about the kit here. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. And I'm not going to go through these in any particular order, but you can see I got a few things here with me. So I'm going to start with the total station itself. So let me do that, and that's what's in this case. So I'm going to bust this open, and I'll put it to your direction here like that, so you can see what we've got here. And I've got a GoPro here, so I'll zoom on this. So this is the total station device itself. And there's like a battery charger, so you can fit 2 batteries in here. There's also the cable for it, and this also has, let me just take this out of here. This has what's called a tri-block. So this is what's at the bottom, and this is used for leveling. So it's sort of triangular in shape, and there are 3 knobs here. Okay, so that's what that does. Now, let me move this over here so I can show it. Like that. You can see that, so the total station will move around this way, so horizontally, so that's how it measures the horizontal angle. And there's a little telescope here, so that's a little eyepiece here that you'd look into, and this is just a lens. If I take the cap off, you point this, and you basically take the crosshairs that are on the inside, point it at something, and you can see here I can move this up and down. So this is your vertical angle. So I've got my horizontal angle, I've got my vertical angle, and when I choose to take a measurement, there's basically a beam that comes out and takes a distance measurement, and it knows the angles of that particular measurement, and it'll read it out to you. So I've got 2 screens here. There's one here, and then there's one here. Now the total station also has a couple of other little features here, and they are like these little knobs here. So you can actually lock these, and then when you rotate these little knobs here, so this is the lock, this rotation will give you a very fine adjustment, because if you're shooting something or measuring something far away, it's very difficult to control it by hand. So you have to kind of lock it and then slowly adjust these knobs left or right. And you have to be careful, because if you keep adjusting, you'll eventually run out of travel. So you have to set it back and then lock it back in. No big deal. And there's 2 of them. So this one is for the vertical. So if I unlock it, I can move this very easily, and I lock it there. And this is for the horizontal. If I lock this one, then you'll see that, right, it gets locked in place. And again, you have fine adjust there. Now here is another little sight, and it has a little focusing ring, but if you look through here, you actually look down the center of the bottom center underneath here, right through down to the ground. And there's a reason for that, and that is because we want to set up a reference point. Okay, so when you want to set up over a specific point on the ground, it's very important to make sure that the unit is set up, and so that will help you do that there, so that's no problem. And of course, there's a number of buttons and things like that that you can use. I don't use the main controls that are on here, except to do some basic stuff like leveling. For that, we're going to use something else called the data collector. So I'm just going to put this back for now. That's the bulk of it. Of course, the case has the usual, has a manual. I've dropped in a little tape measure that I use regularly. There's an extra battery. There's a battery already in here, and there's some other little ancillary cables and stuff for other things that I'm not going to get into. So when putting or handling the total station, there's a handle that's up here. It's got 2 knobs that locks this in, so you can just take this and pick this up. But if ever, you had to kind of get up really high or something, for whatever reason, you could remove these. There's 2 knobs here to remove these. I've never had to remove it. I've never shot everything directly above me. So yeah, and then basically putting this back, you have to kind of put it back in this way here. So I have the knob facing out this way in the case, and I've got this over here. So that's basically the total station right there. Now there's other things that we use. Let's see, in no particular order. Let's start with the tripod. So this is the main tripod here. I'll just take this out here. So it's pretty rugged. It's got some hefty metal feet here with some points on the tip. And so basically you'll undo this, open it up. There's some knobs here. There's an inner piece that extends, and so you can raise or lower this. I'll get into the setup of this in a little bit, but you have to be careful when using these little pins or these steel feet here when you're on an indoor surface that's rather hard, like a tiled floor or a hardwood floor, because it can be quite slippery. So there's other little things you can get, like rubber feet, or there's even this a retaining ring or bar that you put underneath, and it's a little metal sort of ring, let's say, and you can put the feet in there and then they won't slip out. It helps to retain the feet. So up here, up on the top, okay, we have a nice smooth surface. This is a machined surface, so we want to always make sure that this is nice and level and nice and clean. So just be careful about getting any kind of grime or dirt on that. Okay, that's the tripod. Let me put that there. Now I have here, I can move this over a bit. This is the prism up here, and this is the pole, okay, the prism pole. And this is just a tripod that I use to hold this up, okay? So normally you may not have this, so you can undo this here. Let me loosen it up, it might be easier. All right, there we go. So let me just move this off to the side for a second. There we go. So this is the prism and then the prism pole, and there's a cap on here, so let me take that off. So this is what you're going to shoot with the total station when it's set up. So this is one way to measure. And the basic idea here is that this particular prism is just a little, like a piece of glass, and there's a crosshair in between. And so you'll see it when you look through the total station. There's like a little crosshair in there. You basically point to the middle. This outside sort of yellow and black target is to help you center the crosshairs from the total station on here. And then basically you shoot the prism. The benefit here is that it really reflects the signal back. And so you can get really, really far with the prism. So you can get hundreds of meters away from the total station, and basically you set up over a point. And that's what the prism pole is important for. So there's some markings over here, there's feet, and then there's meters. So it's important to know how high this is, okay? There's a little lever here that you can loosen and lift this up or down, okay? And then there's a little bubble level here. So normally this is a two-person operation, and so one person would be holding the prism, they'd go over, set up over a point, and they would make sure that this bubble level is dead centered, okay? And once it's dead centered, you say, okay, you're good, you give a signal, and then basically the person who's operating the total station would take the shot and take the measurement. Now this looks a lot more simple than it actually is, because if you're outdoors and you have this extended up, it's really funny, but if you try to center this and hold it steady, you've got to hold your breath, and you can see that just these little movements will change the measurement somewhat. And the higher this pole is from the point on the ground, okay, it moves quite a bit. So you have to be careful about that. There's no need to always go with the pole all the way up, just kind of go as high as you need. All right, and make sure that you're nice and steady. And there's some tricks for doing that, for like, you know, holding both together. It's even your breathing and stuff like that. I know some people don't care, but if you really want a good shot or a good measurement, you really have to be steady. And that's where this comes in. So this is just a tripod that will secure the pole. So if I move this around like this, okay, I can just lock this in place. You set this up over a point, you make sure that it's nice and level, like that. Okay, that's level, tighten it up. Okay, so the bubble is right in the middle there, and you can see that it just stays nice and still. So this is a really good setup when you have to take measurements that are far away, or you're by yourself. You can set it up, go back to the total station, take some shots. Okay, but it's always nice to have somebody else there, because otherwise it's a very long process. You're walking back and forth to this, and if you're taking long shots, then this becomes a bit of a deal here. Now, a couple of things with the prism that are important to note. So depending on the type of prism that you have, it's important to know the prism constant, or what's called a prism constant. And basically what that has to do with is that when when the laser goes out and hits the glass, it's going to slow down, okay? So basically when light travels through a medium that's denser than air or a vacuum, then something happens to it, so it basically slows down, and so that affects the measurement reading. So having this prism constant is important to adjust for that. If you don't have that entered properly, or you don't know what the prism constant is, you can call the manufacturer and you can look it up online. Some have a 0, some have 30 offset or whatever, and you can look that up and find out more about this. But this one is a 30, so this prism has a constant of 30, so you have to enter that in. Okay, that's that. This case here is just for the prism pole. You have to unscrew the target that's up here, so I can just unscrew this off, and then just the pole itself will go into this little case here, and that's a nice way to travel with it if you can. Okay, now normally, excuse me, so normally you need to record the data somewhere, and often it'll get recorded on the total station. But there are things called data collectors. And so let me open this here. Actually, I'll move this out of the way. And let me go over here so you can see it. So this is a data collector. So this is a Sokkia data collector. And this particular one is also, I guess it's made by GTAC as well. So you've got the box here. You can see the code SHC25A. I also didn't mention that the total station itself is a Sokkia 530R3, okay, and so the 530R3, or the number there, has to do with the accuracy, okay, so how accurate it can measure angles, and the R3 with there's a little snowflake on here that I'll show you after, and that's basically the low temperature unit. So you can use this, I believe, down to -30 degrees Celsius, so it can really handle a very wide temperature range. But this data collector here, I'll show it after, but basically it comes with a little stylus. This runs with an old version of Windows, like a mobile version of Windows, and there's software on here, and the software will allow you to connect remotely to the total station, and it uses a program called Evidence Recorder. So Evidence Recorder is what I'm using here. That's what I'm going to be showing in this particular video. It's an older version. I haven't had the need to update it, but it communicates back and forth, and it makes it really to take recordings and take shots with this. Now, there is another mode that you can use with the total station, and that is reflectorless. And I haven't talked about that, but there's usually two modes. One is called IR mode, which uses the prism, and the other one is called reflectorless. So reflectorless means that you don't need a reflector, you don't need a target sheet. You can just shoot a surface and then take the measurement right on that surface. So there's a little laser that pops out, like a little visible laser that you'll see when you shoot, and that's your reading. Basically, point the crosshairs onto a specific point that you want, tell it that you want to take a reading, it'll shoot that out, and then it'll come back. And so this will get out at quite a distance, and yeah, it's super useful when you can't get the pole or the prism pole up high, the top corner of a building. There's a lot of different scenarios where you will use the reflectorless option. So that's pretty much the kit and what's required here. What I'm going to need to do now is actually go set it up, and then basically show you how you start from the ground up into taking some measurements and how we can get those measurements onto a computer. So let's go do that. Okay, so I've decided that what I'm going to do is actually set up inside, just in this little area here. It doesn't matter if we're inside or outside, but I just have a little bit more control inside. And it's going to be the exact same setup, and I can also cover some things that are unique to indoor situations. Now, I have all the equipment over there, and what I'm going to do is just break out every piece one by one and sort of just go in order, setting all the equipment up and getting the software going and how you would take shots, and I'll explain a few things in between. Now, I want to say this, full disclaimer, I'm not a surveyor, and I know what I know from just working with this equipment for quite some time, but there's a lot more to surveying with a total station. And so what I'm going to be focusing on is mapping, okay, forensic mapping. I'm not doing georeferencing, I'm not doing anything like that. I'm just interested in taking measurements of objects in a local coordinate system relative to the total station. So there's other things you can do. There's a million things you can do with the total station, some advanced features and stuff. I'm just going to stick with the basics. So I'm going to start grabbing these out, and we're going to get going here in a second. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is set up the tripod. Okay, that's the first thing that we need to do. So let me grab that and then we'll get it out here. All right, so this is the tripod here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring the GoPro close here so that we can get in nice and close. You can see everything. And it doesn't matter really where I set up. Maybe I will set up just in this area. It's more or less central. And then I can shoot some points here or there or whatever. So there's a little strap here. And what I'm gonna do is undo this strap so that the legs can move freely like this. Okay. Now, a few things with respect to the tripod. There's some little adjustments here so you can sort of raise or lower the tripod. And the first thing you need to do, you'll notice that there's these little pegs down here that sort of stick into the ground. So you can step on this part here and step it into the ground. So you have to be aware of what kind of surface that you're on. And when you're doing an outdoor surface like an asphalt or concrete or whatever, this is going to be relatively stable. So because it's rough on concrete, the little the feet here, they're not going to slip all that much. If you're in dirt, it's really important to sort of step on this and get it into the ground nice and firm so it's not going to move while you are taking measurements. The other thing that you have to consider is if you're indoors, so you're on a marble floor, you're on a hardwood floor, these feet are going to be really, really slippery. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a device that I came up with. Let me grab that. Now you can get these whatever, but this one is custom made. So basically it's a ring in the center that holds these three arms. And there's little holes in here. And what I can do is I can stick the tripod feet into these holes, and you can see them here. There's a bunch of holes over here. And what that'll do is it'll avoid the feet from spreading out or from falling to the ground. You have an expensive piece of equipment. So we definitely don't want to make that an issue for us. So what I'm going to do here is just move this up like this, and I'm going to put this in here. Like there's one. I'm going to grab another one. There's two. And I'm going to grab this one. Just move this over a bit, and there's three. So now I just have to be careful not to make this slide or whatever, but at least I'm not going to lose one of these legs, and this is a very, very stable setup. Okay, so let's raise this up a bit, and I'm just going to loosen these nice and loose, and then when I raise it up just like that. Okay, so now if I just sort of shake this loose, you'll see that I can raise this up. Now, important point. There's a couple things you need to consider when you're thinking about how high you're going to place the tripod. One has to do with your height. The other one has to do with what points you're going to be shooting. And so this may not be obvious right now, but you could run into a situation where you're trying to get a point that's really low in front of you, and the sight, or basically when you're looking through the little telescope that's on the total station, ends up being so high you can't really get over it. Okay, and the same thing goes when you're pointing upwards or whatever. So I'm going to put this at a height that's something like this, okay, for me, and I'm only going to be taking shots that are kind of horizontal, so I don't have to worry too much about going too high or too down low. But if you have something in front of you, sometimes you want to move yourself a little bit further back so you can reach it. Otherwise, you're going to be taking a very, very steep shot. So keep the total station at a reasonable height. And let's say I just lock it in here for now. And I want to obviously try and get this level. So being level is important. I'll make some finer adjustments later here, but I'm just going to look by eye. It's roughly level, maybe a little low on this side. Okay, nice and tight, and that looks pretty good. Okay, something like that. So yeah, if you start off level with the total station level, that's pretty good. Usually I make sure that this is nice and clean, okay? And it's also important to think about where you're going to set up, okay? So there's something called a reference point, and when we set this up, you'll notice that there's a big hole here, and there's a hole in the ring here, and there's a good reason for that. And the reason is that I want to be able to look straight down into the, sort of into this path here, straight down on the floor, so I can see where I'm setting up over. So if I'm setting up over a point. So for example, in my case, what I might do is I might say, well, I want a reference point right where, oh, that came out. Let me get that back in there. I may want a reference point right at the corner of the tile. And if I mark that tile, I can always come back again. So when you're setting up the total station and the tripod, it's all about repeatability, being able to come back again and then shoot the same point, okay, or set up in the same manner and being able to, you know, take another series of shots. That's just in case you have to come back later on or whatever because you missed something or something else comes up. Or sometimes surveyors, what they'll do is they'll monitor something, so they'll come in, they will measure, and then they'll go away for a month, come back, measure again, go away for a month, come back. So you want to make sure that all those points are in the same coordinate system to one another. Otherwise, they're just kind of, you can't relate one to the other. And so what we do is you mark down a reference point and you can set up over that point. I'll show you more in a bit. Let me grab the total station. All right, let me move this out of the way. Let me go a bit lower so you can see that. All right, hopefully you should see that okay. All right, so I'm gonna open this up like that. I've got the total station. I've got the battery and everything else. There's a battery in it, should be okay. So I'm just gonna lift this out carefully. I like to take two hands. And what I do is whenever I put this on here, I always kind of feel the bottom, make sure that there's no garbage on here or there's no dust or little bits and pieces of things that I don't want. And I just give this a quick check. Looks fairly level. This is a machine surface. And I'm gonna align this little triangle, okay, this tri-block. This is called the tri-block. So like that, it's a triangle. And I'm gonna put it down. You see that there's a threaded portion here. And there's a little bolt there, if you wanna call it that. And I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna put this in the center. And I'm gonna loosely put this in place. So I gotta get this in the center. And oops, I missed it. There we go. And I'm just gonna kind of get this a little bit, not too tight, okay, not too crazy. All right, so there, like that. And I can still move it. I'm just gonna center this a bit better. It looks nice and even. And now I'm gonna just kind of snug it in place. Okay, great. That's loose, and then you can see that I can turn this no problem. Okay, now I'm gonna take the cap off here because I am gonna need that. All right, so the next part, there's two things that I need to do. One is figure out where I'm set up over. And for that, I need to use this little lens that's through here. So I need to look through this, I can focus and adjust. There's a little crosshair there and I can decide where I'm gonna put the total station. So there's a tile here that makes like a little corner, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use that. Now, if you're outdoors, there's a number of things you can do. So a lot of people use what are called PK nails, or they'll literally mark a couple of lines on the ground. Like sometimes if you're walking on the sidewalk and you see like a little painted cross or whatever, that's usually somewhere where somebody's done a total station survey. Sometimes they'll actually take like a sharp object and they'll engrave a cross in the ground. So you ever see like a little X or a check mark, or not a check mark, but an X or a cross or whatever that's sort of engraved on the ground? That's probably where a surveyor was taking some measurements over. So it's an important point. So I'm just gonna use the corner of the tile here roughly, and I can do this. I can go through, I can look, and I can focus here, and I can see where I am. So right now I'm not exactly centered, okay, but I can also move this. So if I loosen this here, I can move this around a little bit to where I need to be. So right now I can't move it enough. I don't have enough place. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna move this whole thing together and until I get to where I need to be. Okay, just roughly, because I haven't leveled it yet. All right, so now to turn this on, okay, what I do is there's just a couple of buttons that I press here. The first two buttons at the top, and it's just firing up. Okay, so now it's all up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to level the total station. And so before I do that, I'm going to put this case away. Okay, so in order to level this, what I'm going to do is there's a button that's called function. So I'm going to hit the function button, and then there's another menu item here called tilt. So I'm going to click on the tilt button, and what I'll have is a little menu or a view of the leveling device, or the inclinometer. And there's a couple of rings, and just like a bubble level, you would do that. Now, there's different ways to do this, okay? Now, and people have different tricks or whatever. I've just kind of come up with my own method. And basically what you have is you have two knobs, okay, in the back, or if on one side, and then one at the front. So 3 knobs. But what I'm going to do is I take the total station and I rotate it so that the face here is going to be parallel to these 2 threads. And then I look at it, at what I have, and see how level it is. So the bubble level is off to one side. So I go to the opposite thread, and I'm just going to make some adjustments here. Okay, and I can see that it's kind of centered like this, but the level is all the way on the front. So the whole total station is sitting this way, it's high. So now I can just go to the front here, and I can make some adjustments, and I can level it. I need to bring this down. And basically what you do is you keep playing with this until you can kind of bring it into spec here. Okay, right now it's getting very, very close. Okay, not bad. Okay, I'm gonna live with this right now. I'm reading like negative 0.09 and 0.02 seconds. So degrees, minutes, seconds, it's very, very small. I'm gonna get the GoPro here, and I'm gonna show you what I've got. Let me just lift this up so I don't bang anything right now, because I'm all kind of set up. Okay, so there you go. I don't know if you can see this. Okay, it's a little difficult to see, but yeah, there you go. You can kind of see the level there. Okay, and it's kind of the dot is like right in the middle there. Okay, so maybe I'll take some video of this a little bit later. Let's just show you what's going on. So let me do this. Put this back. All right, great. Okay, so now that it's level, I want to check it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it 90 degrees. Okay, about 90 degrees or so, and I'm going to check it again, and bang, it falls right in place. So you can just walk around, you can check it in different places, but once you check it a couple times, it should be fine. So it's well within the 2 rings, and it's like almost dead centered, okay? So that's a good sign there. That's a very good start. I'm gonna hit the escape, okay? So that's the escape. I'm gonna hit that, and I'm gonna get back to the main menu. So in terms of the total station, I'm actually almost set up, but there's one more thing I want to do, and I want to take a measurement. So there is a line here, okay? So what I want to do is take a measurement from the floor to this line right here, and this will give me the height of the total station approximately over the reference point. And this is important if I want to come back and set it up at the same height, and also to know where my coordinate system is, right? So a relative height to the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a tape measure here. And I'm going to take a measurement. So I'm just going to take this out like that, and I'm going to do my best here to make sure this is nice and level. So I have, got to be picky here. Let's say it's 1 meter 45.3. So 1.453. Let me just make sure about that. I want to make sure that let me do it again. Right? You heard the saying, measure twice, cut once. So 145.3. I like that. So 1.453 is our measurement, and that's the height. So let me move that over there. So I have to remember that, 1.453. Okay, so now we've got that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get the data collector, and I'm going to fire that up. And then once we get that going, we're going to start to communicate with the total station and do the rest of the setup from the total station. Okay, so I've got the data collector, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to show some of this, but there's a little on-off switch over here that turns it off. And once you turn it on, you can then also actually turn it on from here. There's an on switch. Now when I get in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire up the the evidence recorder software. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the button that's just to the top right here. It looks like a little magnifying glass, but I have a shortcut key set up, but you can actually just go in and check this out. Now, The other thing that's going to happen here is I usually keep the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth on, okay, so that it can communicate here. So if there's any problems with communication, you usually have to check it from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a new project here. So let me see if I can, I'm not sure if I can get this from here, from the GoPro, but let me see what I can do here. Let's see. It's going to be a little difficult. It'll be a little difficult to do, but what I'll do is I'll go back after and I'll show you what I'm doing here. Maybe I'll just run through it. So I'm going to go to new project. I'm going to click on that and enter a project name. Well, I'm going to click on this. If I double click, I'll get a little keyboard. So I'm going to call this the test, or I'll just call this, yeah, sure, test. Why not? Test is easy, and I'll go okay. Great. So now what happens is it gives me another screen and it says, what are you going to be using for a template file and stuff like that. And I'm just going to use the defaults. It says forensic-EVR, CSV, that's fine. Raw data file, test.raw, that's good. And I'm just going to go ahead and go continue. Okay, now it's going to go to another screen. And now it says, what is my distance unit? So I'm going to be working in meters and I'm going to be at 3 decimal places, so that'll be my precision. And for angles, I'll be using degrees, minutes, seconds, and that's fine. And then it says the direction format, north azimuth, and a scale factor of 1, and that's fine. So I'm going to click OK. All right, great. Now I get into the connection screen, and it wants me to pick the instrument. So it says, yeah, it's a total station. It's the 530R3, whatever. I'm just going to go ahead and hit connect. And if the Bluetooth is on, okay, you heard that little beep. That little beep is a good sign. That means it's communicating and it got everything. Now it's asking me, would you like to create a new reference point which will be used to occupy the instrument? And I'll be like, yeah, hell yeah, I do. So I'll do a reference point over here. So some things I can do now, if I look through here, I want to see where I'm at. So, okay, so I'm not exactly where I want it to be, but I could be. So this is where you make some adjustments. So I'm just going to put this over here for a second. And I am going to tell it to set up over a reference point, but I want to be over there already. So I'm just going to loosen this. And one little trick is you can just slide the total station a little bit if you have a little bit of play. So I am, okay, so now I'm almost over the corner. So I'm just going to slide this a little bit. I'm going to have to check my level again. Okay, not quite there, but almost. Okay, right there. Perfect. I'm right at the corner of a tile down here. That's what I want, and that's what I'm seeing through here. So you'll see this is a little bit offset, but that's okay. It's no problem at all. But what I need to do now is I need to check the level and make sure that it's okay. So I'm going to go back to the function. I'm going to click on tilt, and then what I'm going to do is make sure that this is okay. All right, and now it's gone off a bit. So I'm just going to make an adjustment here. Yeah. Make sure that I'm going the right direction. No big deal. Okay, so it's coming right back into center. Great. That's good. I'm going to move it around. Usually when you check it at 90 degrees, it's fine there. And then it's fine there. It's like dead centered. Okay, so that's good. So that means I'm right over the reference point. Let me just make sure again. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. It's leveled. Oh, I got to make a small adjustment. So I'm really picky about this. So I like to make sure that I'm really close to where I need to be and that everything is level. So sometimes you got to iterate a little bit here. So I'm just going to go like that and tighten it up again. So imagine I'm leveling the instrument. So basically down at the bottom, it's moving. Okay, so I have to always tweak it, but it looks like I'm on, and I'm on here. It looks nice and level and beautiful. I'm right on that corner. So I know that next time, if I mark that point, I can get right back to where I need to be. All right, back to this thing. So it says, do you want to occupy this as a reference point? And I'm going to go, yeah, I do. So now it comes in. There are menus here, and it's asking me some questions about this particular reference point, if I want to give it a coordinate or something like that. So it's going to be called RP1, reference point 1, and I'm going to give that the coordinates of 0, 0, 0. Okay, no problem. And it has a point ID of 1. So basically you can go ahead, yes, store this point. And it says, would you like to occupy this point now? It means that you want the total station actually over this point. Yes, I do. Okay, and then it says occupy point 1, and it says instrument height. So that measurement that we just took here is important. So I'm going to click on that, double click on the instrument height, and I'm going to type in 1.453. That was our measurement that we took, and click OK. Now it lists 1.453. Now there's another section here. It talks about a backsight. So a backsight is like a directional point, okay? So that's one point, and then you get another point that's also kind of as a reference if you want to think of it that way. So what I'm going to be doing is just going the backsight direction, whatever I choose is going to be 0 degrees right now. So that's what it's showing me here. So if I set up here and I shoot straight at the wall, okay, this is going to be my 0 direction, and all the coordinates are going to show up relative to this direction this way. So that's something you have to keep in mind. If it doesn't matter what it is, you still get the relative distances and angles between them, but I'm just going to do it this way and go okay. All right, so now it says observe backsight. So I actually get into the screen where I need to do all the measurements and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up a little piece of tape or something that I can use as a backsight. And it could be anything. You can even use the prism pole. There's a number of different things. I often use just stationary items that are, on a wall or something like that. I'm usually doing these kinds of things on roadways where there's poles, where there's a number of different things. But you want a very, very discrete point that you can target. So, I could actually choose something on that wall down there if I wanted to. That's not a problem. Or even something over here, okay? But what I'll do is, let me grab some tape, and then I'll come back and I'll put a marker on the wall. Okay, so I've got this piece of tape on the wall, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the inside corner as the backsight, and that'll be my 0 direction. Now I didn't make it perfectly perpendicular, but that's fine. It's just for a demonstration. So what I'm going to need to do here is look through the eyepiece, okay? So I'm going to go this side, and I'm going to roughly align it. Now, you see that there's a little black cylinder up top here, and there's one on the bottom here. So these here are to roughly sight where the crosshairs are going to be. So if I just look here and I kind of point it, there's a little arrow that's actually through here, and I can just look on the wall, I can find the tape, and I need to focus this a bit better. All right, let me see here. There we go. All right. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lock this in place. So I'm going to take this and lock it, and I'm going to take the vertical once it gets close, and I'm going to lock it as well. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to flip this around this way. I like the controls on this side, and then do it this way. So there we go. I'm looking at it, and I'm going to get a little bit closer. I can see the blue. So now I'm going to lock it. Now with these little ones will lock it, and then these larger ones here will make fine adjustments. So first things first, focus it. So you get nice, and there we go. Oh yeah, now I can really see that. And I'm moving this over. I'm gonna adjust the little one, the little ring here is for adjusting the focus of the crosshairs. And depending on your eyes, there we go. I can see it really clearly now. I'm gonna move that like this, and I'm gonna move that up. So I am dead centered on the crosshairs. So what I can do now is, I need to shoot that. Now, I am not using the prism pole this time. So sometimes you can use the prism pole, or sometimes you can use the reflectorless. So I'm just going to use the reflectorless. So there's a little option here for EDM. And there's two options here, and I talked about them earlier. So one is reflectorless, and the other one is going to be IR. So I'm going to use reflectorless fine. Okay, reflectorless fine. I'm going to click on that, and now I am on RL fine, and now I can just shoot it. So there's a button here where I can fire, and you'll watch there. You'll see like a little. Hold on a second. You'll see a little thing that says it's measuring. Now something happened here where it lost communication, so I'll have to figure out what's going on here. No, it lost communication. Oh. It beeped. So let me just try it again. There we go. Now you'll see that it's hitting a little laser on there. So I'm gonna get the GoPro and show that to you. I'm gonna observe it again, and I'm gonna put this up here. So I want you to see what happens if you can see the laser. Now this needs to be really close here. All right, there we go. So here I go, I'm gonna take the shot, and you should be able to see the little laser. All right, so that took the measurement and it gives you the numbers and stuff like that. And at the very bottom it says if you want to accept it or not. And I'm going to accept it, no problem. And it says, do you want to store this as the back site? Yes. Okay, great. And then it says it's the description is going to be, gives it a number, and it tells you what the XYZ coordinates are. And I'm just going to accept it. I'm going to go store point. Okay, great. Now, there's a whole number of things that you can do with the software here. You can create lines, and you can zoom in, you can see the points as they're coming. But right now, if I were to just use the total station and take reflectorless shots, I can do that without any problem. So I don't need to really worry about the prism or whatever. So if you just need some measurements using this, I can now move this around. So I just got to loosen it. Okay, loose, break that one loose, break this one loose, and now I can move it around. And if I want to take a shot of the wall that's over there, I can definitely do that. So, for example, let me move this so you can see where the shot's going to be taken. Actually, let me do it on this wall here, and you'll see like a little light come up. So I'm just going to point this just about anywhere. In fact, I'm not even going to aim. I don't really care. Just something like that. And I'm going to go now, yeah, I want another measurement. And when I take that other measurement, the laser will show up on the wall there. And I'll just go, yeah, you just accept these. Just go store point, no problem. And I can keep going from there, okay? So it just keeps naming them different names or whatever. You can name the points so you can give it different codes or different prefixes and things like this. So I'm just leaving it as is for now. And on the data collector, I can see where the points are. You can zoom in. You can do a number of different things here. Okay, so that's for reflectorless. Okay, so what we're going to do is this is set up. It's taking measurements reflectorless, okay, without the prism and pole. But what if I want to use the prism pole and I want to be able to set it up over something? Well, now I have a slightly different scenario. So let me go set that up. I'll bring back the prism pole and everything that we need, and then I'll show you what we need to do there. Okay, so I have the prism pole in this case, so I'm just going to open this up, and I'm going to pull this guy out. All right, and I'm going to put this up on the wall, and then I'll get the prism. Okay, so I've got the prism here. And what I'm going to do is put this here, and I'm just going to spin it on. All right. Now, when it comes to the prism, the bottom here, so this little point here, okay, is important that it stays nice and sort of new. And be careful because over time this could wear like a centimeter or whatever, and then your measurements are going to be off a little bit. So you always have to be wary about that. The other thing too is you always have to check the distances here. So I'm working in meters. So if I move this up and I find, so for example, that's 1.7 meters, there's 1.6 meters. So if I pick something like, well, there's 1.5, so I can even make it easy for myself. If that's 1.5 meters, okay, I can click it on here. That's 1.5, it's now locked in place. But I don't know where the center here, okay, you can see where the little yellow triangles sort of meet, okay, where the crosshairs are. I don't know where that is exactly. So there are some adjustments here. So if I loosen this, okay, like that, okay, what I can do is you can actually break this loose. Okay, there we go. And you have some play here. So actually, let me take this off again, and you'll see what I'm talking about. All right. So what you can do, oops, is there's a threaded portion here, okay, just like a little threaded rod that you could increase or decrease the target height to match the 1.5 meters here. So what I need to do is play with this a little bit, okay, because I haven't set it up in a while. So I need to thread this in, So I'm going to do that again. And then once that's in, I need to adjust, you know, either going up or down or whatever. So often what I do here is I'll put this on the ground and I'll measure to where the crosshairs are here, or I'll put it this way. So what I'm going to do is, this is just the way I do it, is I'll put it on the ground. Let me get the camera here so you can see what I'm doing. Like that. All right. And I'm going to go even lower. All right, there we go. Let me get my tape measure. Okay. So this is a little tricky. It helps to have an extra set of hands or somebody else. But what I'm going to do is, like that, is I'm going to set it up over the tip, like that, and I'll probably lose it, but I am going to go to 1.5. Look at that, I'm actually very close to 1.5. It actually has to come down a little bit lower. So I'm going to take this up and I'm going to thread this in a little bit more, like that. And let me check it again. So I'm checking from the tip here, okay, and I'm going to loosen this up. And I'm going to check to where it says, oh, look at that, 1.5, bang on. So if you look in the center of the prism here, what you're going to see are some little crosshairs that all meet at the center. And so if that's good for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock this pin right here. Okay, so I'm going to turn this one, I'll lock that in place, lock that one in place like that. This is at 1.5. I'm now at 1.5. So I know I've checked this. I'm at 1.5 and I'm in good shape, okay? So that's a good thing. That's what I want. All right, which means that this is all set up. Let me just put this back here for now, like that. And I'm gonna get the tripod for the prism pole because I'm gonna take a shot with that. Okay, so let me go back this way. And hopefully you can see that. Okay, now, when you have somebody helping you and they're holding the prism pole, well, let's talk about that, because that's a very common situation. You know, you've got an extra set of hands and no problem, somebody can carry this thing around. So basically what you're gonna do, the best way to do this, you have to point the glass to wherever the person is pointing. So if the total station is down there, you face directly to the total station. If the total station is down there, you face directly to them. And what you're gonna do is, you're going to sort of stand with this, and I find that you have to kind of brace it. You can't just kind of like hold it like this and move around, because wherever that goes, that's your measurement. So the person holding the rod is very important, okay? So what you're going to do is hold very steady, sometimes hold your breath, and there's a little bubble level here, and what you're going to want to do is get that bubble level right in the center. And then you just give a signal like, yeah, go ahead and shoot, and then they shoot, and then you go from there. But it's a lot trickier than you think. So using the tripod here, it becomes a heck of a lot easier. So I think what I'll do is I'll just set it up maybe out this way. Sure, why not? Well, maybe not in front of the door, but why not here? So there's these little buttons on the top here. If you just press them, you can sort of lengthen or decrease the length of these feet. So I'm gonna go like that, and be careful it doesn't slip. And I'm gonna put this in here. All right, and I'm gonna close this, make sure it's set up well, and I'm gonna start to tighten this knob. And I need to make sure that this is nice and level, so I gotta pick it up. Okay, the bubble level is nice and centered, but I need to make sure this is going to point to the total station. Just like that. Okay, that's leveled and everything. So basically, wherever this is touching, what I'm going to tell it is that when I hit the prism, I'm going to be 1.5 centimeters off of the ground. So it's going to offset that for me, and it's going to provide me a measurement on the ground. So that's what it's doing here. That's why the height of the prism pole is really, really important. Okay, now there's some people that don't even bother with this stuff. They just kind of set up and they take measurements. But then what happens is you don't know the height of your total station and you don't know where the height of your prism. So all your measurements are relative. And so doing it this way means you can always go back and you can basically reconstruct the points, add to the mapping area that you've done already. But if you don't do this part, you're kind of stuck. You have to shoot other things and then you're stuck manually aligning things by eye. So it's best practice to do this sort of thing. All right, so what I'm going to do is I've got to do the same thing that I did before. Let me get my data collector. All right, so I'm just going to tap the screen, bring this back. Okay, so first thing I need to do is I need to change the mode that I am running in. So what I'm going to do is I have to go now to infrared. So I'm going to go to infrared fine, and it's going to set it here. Okay, so I need to set this up now. So roughly get into the area that I need here. So there's a triangle. I'm going to look through this, look for the prism pole. There's the prism. Okay, I'm close. When I get close, I just lock these in. You'll feel them. They get nice and snug. And I have to adjust my focus here. So I got to make sure that I can get what I need. Okay, definitely very close to the crosshairs there, there, and there. So I'm dead on the crosshairs here. And once I do that, I'm just gonna go, yeah, I wanna take my measurement and this thing will communicate in a second. Now it was sitting idle for a bit, so it may shut off the Bluetooth or whatever, but we'll see what happens here. I think the first one will probably give me an error, but it'll just come back alive on the second time usually. Give it a moment. Okay, it's probably gonna give me an error. Yeah, it says an error, so I'm gonna go okay. Let me try it one more time, see if it kicks in. I may have to communicate with the device again. Yeah, I think the Bluetooth fell asleep. Okay, so let me just take care of that. So what I'm going to do here is I need to go back to the communication window. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to click on measure distance in the bottom left corner. And actually, I'm going to X out of this. I'm going to go to the start menu. And I'm going to go to the settings. And I'm going to go instrument selection. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to go, let me disconnect and reconnect. And see what happens here. It's starting the Bluetooth over again. You hear the little beep. That's a good sign. So you just got to like refresh it again if it goes idle. All right, so that's great. I'm going to go to the map view. Great. Actually, I'm going to go back to I got my 2 points there. So now I'm going to do this over here. So I'm just going to hit go ahead. It's beeping. That's good. I can hear the clicks. So it's taking a measurement. Okay, and now it says, okay, you got all this sort of stuff here going on. Now, one thing that I didn't set here was the height of the prism. Okay, so down here it actually shows me what's the height. Now right now it's showing 1.7. What I'm going to do is make sure that I change that to 1.5. So I'm going to double click that, bring up the keyboard. I'm going to go 1.5, go OK, and then go store point. So it'll remember the 1.5 and it'll keep going. So now it's got this particular point. So I can keep going and going and going, and I can keep setting this up. What I'll probably do is I'll take a few more points just downstairs here on my own, and then I'll talk about how to export the data from the data collector onto your computer. Okay, so that's the basics of using the total station. And there's obviously a lot there. Just in the data collector and in the software, there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do. So this is really just a basic tutorial on how you kind of set it up and what kinds of things you have to take into consideration. But remember, when you set up the tripod, make sure the tripod is nice and sturdy, right? Make sure that you set up over a point. You look through here and you can always go back to that point again and again, no problem. Okay, make sure you have this nice and level. The tri-block here is what you're going to level after you put the total station on. Make sure the surface is nice and clean before you put the total station up on here. With respect to the prism and the prism pole, make sure that you have the height set correctly. That's very important. And make sure that the person holding the prism and the pole is nice and steady when you take the shot. Okay, that's also very, very important. Remember that there's two modes that you can shoot with on here. So one is using the prism, that's the IR mode, and it's great for taking shots that are really, really far away, or when you can't see something on the ground and you want to offset it. So if you're in the grass and there's a point on the ground and you can't see through the tall grass, you put the prism pole up and you can shoot relative to that point. There's an offset that it will have. Now, of course, if I pull this out now and change it up, I have it set so 1.5 is accurate here. So you'll see the other readings, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, and then I can just punch it in here and I'll be, that'll be okay. That'll correct for the different heights for the prism and the prism pole. And then just the data collector. But what I'm going to do now is just look at some of the data, and that will be it for today. Thanks. Okay, so what I realized was that it's very difficult to sort of understand what's going on with the data collector and the total station here, because obviously the screen is really small. This is an older data collector. It's got older software, so I can't just sort of broadcast the screens or record the screen. So I'm just going to go over a couple of things with the connections and setup, and then kind of go from there. So even though total station is here, it's not set up properly, it'll still give you the idea when working with the data collector and the software. Now, one thing I didn't mention was the battery compartment here. So if you click on this down, okay, I just shut it off. But you've got two little contacts here. You can just put those back in. Put that in, just make sure this little knob is up, and then it kind of locks in place like that. Now the cool thing is that, I'm just going to turn it back on. If you need to shut it off, you just hit these two buttons on the top together. It shuts off. Turn it on, just the single one. And once it turns on, it's ready to go again. So you just need to reconnect with the data collector, and then you're good to go. So here I've got the data collector, and I'm going to see what I can do here. So the button down here is to sort of turn it on, and it's already on. If I click on it, it's set up, and I've got map scenes evidence recorder. So I'm just going to click on this button here and fire it up. Okay, now it's important to level the total station before you start working this thing. So make sure that it's all good to go, and then you can fire up the map scene software. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project, and I'm going to double click in here. And I'm just going to call this, I don't know, vid. Sure, why not? Click OK. And OK. Oh, it already exists. I need to make a new one. Okay, so I'll call it vid1. How about that? Okay, that's our project. So that's great. Then this has to do with the kind of templates that you're using. I'm just going to use the defaults. Go ahead and continue. And then I have to connect to the instrument. So let me, actually, this is just the format still. So this is the meters and stuff. I'm jumping ahead. So just accept the meters and degrees. Now it's the connection screen. So I want to connect. And I should hear some little beeps if everything goes okay. Yeah, so that goes all right. So I'm going to go ahead and go, yeah. So now, once you do that, this is going back to the video. If you rewind a bit, you'll see that, it says, do you want to occupy a reference point? Yeah, so this is what I'm seeing on the screen. Go yes. And then what are you going to call it? So I'm going to call it RP1, and it's going to have coordinates 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to go say, go ahead. So you create the point, then it says, do you want to put the instrument over the point? Do you want to occupy the point? Yes, I do. So I'll do that. Now this is where I need to put in the instrument height. So before, I measured to the side of the instrument. So basically this point right here, right? You measure to that, and then you'll know what to measure to, and then you kind of go from there. So from here, you would put in an instrument height. I'm going to make it, just leave it right now because I don't have one. Or actually, I will put in one. I'll put in one like I had before. Okay, so I'm going to put 1.453 or something like this. I'm just making something up. Go okay. So it thinks that the total station is going to be that distance above the reference point. I'm just going to hit okay. Now it goes into the backside. So remember, the backside is like your starting direction, and you can shoot this either with
IR mode or with reflectorless. So that's this button right here. So if I click on this, these are all your modes right here. So right now I have IR fine. I'm going to go back to reflectorless. Okay, so that means I can just shoot anywhere from the total station. So I just need to point it in a direction, and whatever direction I pick, I will be able to shoot. So normally I would target something on the wall or whatever. I'm just pointing it anywhere, and I'm just going to hit go ahead, and it's going to go ahead, and I'll be able to see the laser. So it says, okay, cool. I got a point. Now, what do you want me to do with this? Do you want me to keep this? Does it look good? Yeah, I'm going to say accept this point. All right, do you want to store this as the backside? Yes, I do. Go ahead. All right, and then you see that it's the description is B1, so that's what it's going to save it at. The point ID is 99, and it gives me the XYZ coordinates here, and that's great. So there's no prism height because this is reflectorless, so it's 0. So I'm just going to go ahead and store the point. Okay, so now you can see that any points that I take now are with reference to the way that this thing is pointing right now. So look, if I turn it to the left a little bit, okay, and I'm going to take another shot here. Now I can go ahead and take a shot. And so down here, where it's got this B1, I can click on this and change the descriptions now. So there's a number of descriptions in the template, but let's say I just call these points. I just want to call it P something or whatever, right? So I can just go P. So each one of these is going to be a point. So I'm just going to go ahead and select it. So now you'll see that down here it just says P. So and the next point is going to be 100. So it'll be P100, P101, and so forth. So I'm just going to go ahead, click on that, go ahead and measure. All right, and then it says, hey, okay, that's cool. Do you want to keep this point? You see it gives me the XYZ. Yes. Okay, do that, and now you'll see that it turned to the left here. Okay, so now it's a little bit to the left. And then I'm going to go, I'll just take a couple of random points here just to show you how it works, like that. And I like reflectorless because it means you don't need the prism and you can just shoot, you know, whatever it is you need. So if it's shooting stuff on the ground and the concrete, it should be okay. Now, one thing you have to be careful of is shooting too oblique. Okay, if a surface is at 90 degrees to you, like a wall or something, then you're good to go. But if it gets too shallow, if the angle between the laser and the surface or whatever is too low, then it's not going to recover anything. Okay, so you can see I've got a bunch of points here, and I'm just going to accept that one. Now up here, there's like a zoom button. There's zooming in and out, so you can like just drag this in. There's a window zoom, so if I want to just drag a window, I can get into there. This is for panning, like that, and there's a bunch of other options here, but these are the basics of, you know, documenting. Now if I go back and I switch to the infrared fine, so that's where I need the prism. So I don't have the prism set up right now, but you'll see over here it says what's the height. Okay, so if I had 1.45 whatever, 1.6, 1.5, whatever it is for the height of the prism to the tip of the pole, and remember, it's the center of the prism to the tip of the pole, I would enter that number here. Okay, and as I'm going along, if I'm shooting a wall, I could call this W. If I'm shooting a road, I can call it R. So you can change these descriptions. And there's other things that you can do here, okay, with respect to connecting lines and all kinds of stuff. Now, if you ever run into a problem with communication, you just hit the start button, and then what I would do is go to settings and then go into the instrument selection. So if you go into instrument selection, okay, you get back to this screen, you can disconnect and reconnect, and often that will do the trick. Okay, now it's important to remember that the unit does need to be level, otherwise sometimes it has difficulty connecting. Now to do importing and exporting, you can see here, let me go back here, I'll go back to the main screen. Oh, I didn't want to exit the program. I want to go back to the map view. The map view gets me back to this. So what I'm going to do is go to start, and then you'll see that it says import export. So you can import export in different formats. The two most common are going to be the ASCII export and the DXF file export. Okay, so I only have a few points here, but I can export what I did downstairs if I want to bring that project up. So let me go back to the home, and what I'm going to do is go to project manager, and I'm going to bring up test 2 was the one that I did downstairs, I think, but let me open that up. Okay, and it just says continue, and then it's asked me probably if I'm going to want to, let's see what happens here. Okay, and I'm going to go to map view, There we go. So these were some of the points that we had. Let me just drag these into view. Okay, so there's a bunch of points here. I can zoom out, zoom on them all. Okay, that's cool. So I have a bunch of points here and I can export these. So back here, I'm gonna go to import export. I'm gonna, let's see here, the DXF file export. It'll say, okay, this is what I'm gonna export. You have some choices here and I'm just gonna go export. And then you have to choose a file name. So I'm gonna double click down here and I'm just gonna call it, I don't know, TT. Okay, and then just go ahead and save, and it'll save it there. So we'll look for that file TT after and pick that up. If I want to do a coordinate file, then the ASCII coordinate file, same thing, export, give it a name. I'm going to double click there to bring back the keyboard, and I'm just going to go TT, okay. I'm going to go save, and then we go from there. Okay, great. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's kind of what I was doing here with the total station connecting and then operating here. You can see it's very easy when you're using the data collector, getting stuff in and out, and actually even keeping record of the points and then having a quick preview in the map view is super helpful. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to go hook this up to my computer and we're going to see if we can export those points and just see if they import into other programs. Okay, so I've got the data collector here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer the files. So for me to do that, this is an older device here, so it's going to give me some problems. The best way to do this that I found right now is I'm going to hit the Windows button down here. I'm here, and I'm just going to go into my files. So File Explorer, and I'll show you where to find this. But if you go to My Device, and you scroll down, you go to Program Files. And then from Program Files, you're going to want Microsoft or Microsurvey Evidence Recorder, and then into the Scenes folder. Now, I did Test 2, and at the bottom here, I have TT and TT. So one is an ASCII file, one is the DXF file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press and hold on here, and I'm going to beam the file. So I'm going to click on that, and now it says searching. So what I need to do on my computer is I need to go to my Bluetooth devices, click on it, and go receive a file. When I do that, this is going to start to detect it. So I just got to wait a second. You can see that something is popping up. And give it a second. Let me just highlight it. Okay, that's my computer. It says MSI. And I'm going to go ahead and go OK. Or actually, it's done. I just clicked on it and it's done. So that's fine. And on my computer, I can see that it's here too. So I'm going to do that one. I'm going to finish, but I got to do the next one. So it's a little tedious because you got to do each one. I haven't figured out a way to select more than one. Maybe I can do two. Let's just see if we can do two. If I click and drag, nah. I'm going to click and hold this one and beam this file. And same thing as before. I need to go to my computer, go to the Bluetooth, and go receive a file. And once I do that, then it should detect it here. All right, let's see. Okay, there's the unknown device. That'll come up as MSI in a second. And I'm just going to highlight it anyway. Okay, it's highlighting. It says it's now receiving. And once it changes on my screen, then I know that I've got it. So, okay, it looks like I've got it here. So I'm just going to go OK. And I am pretty much done with the data collector now. So I'm just going to set that aside. And now we're just going to work with the computer here. Okay, so what I need to do is go find those files and see if we can open them. So they're in my documents. So I'm just going to open this up and go to documents. So there's this one down here. Let's see if this is Notepad, what I can get. So these are the points. So in the Notepad file, you can see here that I've got the coordinates, the point number 199, 101, and then the XYZ coordinates, and then a description here. So that's pretty much what I'm looking for. Now, for some reason, I don't see the other one now. So let me just, actually, let me quickly check that and see if I can get it over. Okay. I'm going to beam that file. I'm going to receive it. I'm going to do the same thing as before. Receive a file. And let's see what happens here. I'm not sure what happened. I may have had to do something here. So I'm going to go ahead and go MSI. It says pending. All right, and I should see it pop up over here at some point. So it says it's there. Okay, that's great. And if I go finish, okay, now the DXF file has come up. So let's just have a look at those points. I'm going to bring in maybe Trifero Zone 3D. I'll move this over. And let me drag this file in and just see if it imports. So I'm just going to make a new file. I'll take the DXF. This was in meters, so I'm going to hit OK, go OK. And you can see that I've got a whole bunch of points here. Okay, great. So that's the basics of just trying to get it in. There are other ways to import up here, like bringing in coordinate data tables and such like that. But that's for another video, I think. This video is already kind of going over, but that's how you get the data from the data collector out into a modern PC.
All right, so that's it. We're going to call it a day there, but that's just the basics of it. And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time on Click 3D. Bye-bye.